We're getting new insight into former President Trump's thinking and attitude during his years in the White House. Breaking from 50 years of tradition, celebrated journalist Bob Woodward is releasing recordings from his 20 different interviews with Trump and issuing a warning about his subject. Woodward says one of the most striking themes is the former president's inability to reflect and take action on the coronavirus crisis that was enveloping the country. Listen to one of Woodward's exchanges with Trump in the summer of 2020.
Was there a moment in all of this last 2 months where you said to yourself, this is the leadership test of a lifetime?
No.
Joining us now, journalist and author of the Trump tapes, Bob Woodward. And Bob, you're doing something that you've never done before, releasing the tapes of your interviews with Trump. And you said hearing the audio is more telling than just seeing the words written on paper. You described Trump pounding in your ears, and that no in that last exchange that we just played, the former president is almost yelling no at you like he's angry.
Well, and he's dismissing any responsibility he has, and that no is like a thunderclap. I'm walking away from this. I mean, if there was ever the leadership test of a lifetime for the president, it was this pandemic. It was a health and political crisis like we've not seen in this country. And he walked away from it. And as you listen to these tapes, particularly on the virus, but on any subject, he kind of goes from denial to concealment to the crime. I call it a crime, not telling the people that he had been warned that by his national security advisors in the most vivid way, which is outlined in these tapes, the interviews with them where they are telling him, I've known 16 national security advisors going back to Kissinger and never once heard one come and tell the president, this will be the biggest national security threat to your presidency. And it wasn't about China, Russia, or Iran. It was about a domestic health crisis that he was covering up.
Yeah, and that he spent the next few weeks and months poo-pooing publicly. This striking chain of events in your tapes we played that you were just referring to, we played earlier the sound of National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien and the former Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger talking about how they warned Trump, January 28th, 2020, that coronavirus would be the greatest national security threat to his presidency to face. 2 months after he was warned, he had this conversation with his son, Barron, young boy, 12 or 13. He was scared of the pandemic. Here's portions from that conversation you had with Trump about his conversations with Barron in March.
I wanted to capture the moment when your son Barron asked you about this.
Well, he's just turning 14, so he was 13 in the White House upstairs in his bedroom. He said, Dad, what's going on? And I said, it came out of China, Barron. Pure and simple. It came out of China, and it should have been stopped. And to be honest with you, Barron, they should have let it be known it was a problem 2 months earlier, and the world would now, we have 141 countries have it now. And I said the world wouldn't have a problem. We could have stopped it easily.
Now, look, obviously the Chinese government, there is a lot of blame to put and assign to the Chinese government. But here he is telling Barron that he wishes he had known about the threat to coronavirus 2 months earlier. But Trump had been told about it literally 2 months earlier in January.
Stunning. Absolutely. I mean, we who are parents know about that moment when you go to the bedside of a child and there is that human interaction that should be built on truth. But Trump is saying, oh, China, they could have stopped this 2 months ago. Trump could have stopped it 2 months ago. When I'm doing this interview with Trump on March 19th, I had no idea. It took me about 6 weeks to find out about the warning, and I found out from O'Brien and Pottinger on May 1st. And when I heard that from them, I was as stunned as I've ever been as a reporter because I go back and listen to this, and my God, Trump is conning not just me, but his son.
Yeah.
And he is laying out, oh, this could have been fixed. The Chinese could have done something about it. Donald Trump could have done something about it by being honest and warning the public that he, as president, has a constitutional and moral responsibility to do.
And then there's this moment in April 5th, 2020, Trump asks you what actions he should be taking to combat COVID. Take a listen.
Give me the list of the things you said. Go. Did you write them down or not?
Yes, I wrote them all down.
Read them out. Go ahead, read them.
Okay, the first is testing.
And then you go through your list of what you suggest. This is more than 2 months since that stark warning about the pandemic from National Security Advisor O'Brien. The president is turning to you on what actions she should be taking. I mean, that must have had you worried about the state of the country, the state of the response.
But he's not turning to me, frankly. I called him up, and between the period he'd closed the country down because of the virus and this April 5th conversation, I talked to Dr. Fauci, Dr. Redfield, the other experts on this, and they said they're meeting with Trump. He will not listen. He's got all these virus deniers in the room. And I said, what won't he listen about? So they lay out a series of coordinations and, setting up airline rules and defining simple things like what is an essential worker. So I realize I've got this information. They're telling me Trump will not listen. I realize I can talk to Trump. So I spend about 15 minutes going through these, and then at the end, he said, well, did you write them down? And I went through them again thinking, he's going to do something. You know what he did? Absolutely zero.
Yeah.
It was so sickening to see he was not doing these things, and he'd lost the avenue of communication with the experts. I asked him at one point, said, have you ever sat down with Dr. Fauci? He's the expert. And Trump says, oh, no, this is a busy White House.
Oh.
Busy White House. Didn't have time to sit down. I mean, it's like the President of the United States not talking to his chairman of the Joint Chiefs or
Right.
the commander. I mean, it's almost, it really should be unbelievable. The problem is it's exactly what happened out of Trump's mouth.